Hey everybody, welcome back. Glad you can join the discussion. Christians of Western culture, we gotta talk. So here's another one. Have you ever prayed and nothing happened? You ever feel like the Christianity that you experience and walk out is lame and powerless? Well, you're not alone. This is a bit of a sequel to last week's episode. We're going to talk about this today. As you know, we're just neighbors here, talking about some of the things that we Christians should adjust. I'm JD Shin, and I'm officiating this big little conversation. Ready? Let's roll. If we take a step back, we can take a look and see that much of our Christian world is really ill-informed, dull, and, I'm going to say it, powerless. There. I said it. Ever thought or heard someone say, I prayed really hard and nothing happened? Have you ever said that yourself? I know I have. Well, why are miracles so rare? Honestly, from my perspective, many of the famous miracles that we see today are heretical displays of greedy people who charge for, quote, healing. And I mean the real ones. That's what I'm talking about. The real miracles, not coincidences that are called healings. Or people who get all hyped up and suddenly feel better, or staged healings where you pay somebody to walk across their stage and get all shook up and emotional, and then you get out of your wheelchair that they gave you when you walked into the stadium. Those are just hype. And that's not new either. If you read your Bible, you saw Simon the sorcerer. That's actually his name. I'm not even making that up. Seriously. This dude built a business of making up miracles, but had no God-given authority. And he wanted to get paid for it. It didn't end well for him. New Testament, Book of Acts, chapter 8. Check for yourself. Moving on. What I'm talking about today is real God-given authority that brings real change and deep healing. Why don't more of us who say we belong to Jesus carry around and act on the authority that we've been given? Instead, many of us just have hanging around our neck the first century version of an electric chair and call that being a Christian. A cross, if you didn't get that one. Sorry, not sorry for the fluency and sarcasm that I have. But seriously, don't we have more than that? Is Christianity as lame as many of us have portrayed this benign existence and calling it faith that we operate our whole lives by? A faith that lacks faith and power. Authority? What authority? It leads me to have to ask a question. What are we missing? Do we need to pray more? Read our Bible more? Go fishing more? Eat more hummus? While all of those things are good in their own right, I love hummus, especially that kind that has the roasted peppers and the pine nuts. Oh, so good. Seriously though, why is it that we, generally speaking, don't have or use the authority that we're supposed to have, biblically? And then we have the audacity to wonder why people aren't drawn to the version of Christianity presented by Western culture today. In this sense, in many cases, we're all talk. It's this dry version of Christianity that leaves people wondering, whether consciously or unconsciously, why would I want that? I have more enjoyment out of my life as it is than what I see you having. This lack of life and operation in the real, unseen world, I'm serious, it's real. And then sharing that life that displays something that in my pea brain doesn't equate with what God has for those who meet him. Dull and God don't go together. Like Jesus said to Nathanael, you will see greater things than these. And Jesus had just read his mail. We must see greater things than mere Sunday church with some songs and a cute and slightly motivational chat from a guy on a platform and a life full of boredom and humdrum. I don't know about you, but I want more than that. And I think the average person walking around in life wants that too. And it's the things that God has for us as humans. I mean, just think about all the talks and books about living a life of meaning. People want that. I'll suggest what author Rob Reimer suggests. The modern day non-Christian, quote, has rejected the version of Christianity they were presented. Notes will be in the show notes, so you can check that out there and go see his book, Spiritual Authority. That was on page 3. Go back several hundred years, too, and people had a higher level of receptivity to Christianity. Well, why? People who stuck their neck out to be a living, breathing Christian walked their faith out with real authority, and it made an impact. But those folks had some real risk factors in doing so. Doubt me? Get some history. Even with persecution, things blew up due to people who were authoritative, which came from their relationship with Jesus and the fact that they operated under his spiritual authority that he had given to people. That's a big concept. Seriously, go read Fox's Book of Martyrs. If you've done it before, do it again. It's worth it to see some of that action. One interesting factoid on this subject is that we're living in a day and an age that looks a lot like first century Corinth or Ephesus. Talk about hedonism. Our society is living that out. We just sprinkled technology on it. And in those societies, people flock to the gospel message. Well, what's different? Well, to quote Reimer again, whenever Jesus showed up, or the early Christians, people flocked. Truth presented in love and power is winsome, and it represents Jesus well, end quote. I can hear you typing a comment. Okay, you nutcase. So we're supposed to become these crazy people who scream at demons and put holy claws on people and still nothing happens? Or maybe you're a bit more mild. Bro, we're not all wired to be extroverts. Not so fast. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying we should get all hyped up. I'm saying that if we truly are a healed people at a soul level, a God healing level, we've really been given a fresh set of armor, not been turned into some overhyped, emotionally charged people who put on a false pretense of hysteria. That version of Christianity, that's not what I'm talking about. But also, because of those new digs, the armor, a new soul, really. Life should be pouring out of us like Niagara Falls. Even if we're introverts, be an introvert, but be a life-giving introvert. Power, authority, they mean something. We must recognize the impact that joy has on sharing the true message of Christ. And that can come out of any personality style. Here's a thought from the wisest person to ever live. The light of the eyes rejoices the heart, and good news refreshes the bones. The bones, the body. Good news, the gospel, brings healing. If we're not bringing the healing, are we bringing the gospel? This is one of those let's look deeper at what and who we are discussions. Like I pointed out, life that pours out of people has a real draw to a broken soul. And even a person who says all people are good has a hard time refuting that a person who is life-giving, just like Jesus, isn't much of a draw to be around. That life-giving person, that person that embodies the gospel and lives it out in authority, is a real draw to anyone. No matter the belief structure, people just want to be around that life-giving person. Dull and lifeless quote-unquote Christians who don't give out a sense of really, truly knowing God, they just look like Pharisees or boring people. Or in my fluent sarcasm, religious club attenders. Or like my past guest Version Fosner said, why do my neighbors dress nice every Sunday and go to the same old museum every week? Oof. Reality takes another stab. Anyone who's been around the church very long knows the reference to Pharisees, but if you haven't, here's the reference. Pharisees were/are leaders in the Jewish church, and their hierarchy, rather. They saw themselves as elite because they were super religious. They followed the rules really well. Their authority, in a spiritual sense, came by living within certain parameters, defined by people who also thought that God was after obedience more than he's after a person's soul-level allegiance. Catch that. God's after soul-level allegiance. He said, I desire mercy rather than sacrifice. He loves to give out the goodness that he has, and that goodness really should be pouring out of us. Since those Pharisees thought they were so awesome, they behaved in a certain way that said, hey, we're good, we're nifty, we have it all together. Since you don't, I'll just tell you, look, here's these hundreds of rules we came up with. Do these. But God wants you to say a prayer and then go to church and be just like me, a rule follower. Does that sound familiar? Have you ever seen that? Have you ever been that? Man, I know I have. And sometimes I still am. I don't like being the kind of person, I don't like being the kind of Christian that just follows the rules because that's what the Christian culture says I should do. There's no power in that. There's no big life. There's no amazingness in that. I'm fairly certain I've been sarcastic enough today to make my point, but just in case, I'll be a little bit more clear. God's desire for us isn't to be lame, boring people who are just good at following our own Christian cultural rules. Rules and things are there to protect us. I get that, and I want to follow those rules. But there's more than that. Many of the rules that we follow are actually really beneficial, but some of them are just cultural. But we've been given a gift of real life. If we were to put our focus on growing and giving the life-giving characteristics God offers us, going out and making disciples seems to me like there would be a lot more open doors. Way more than being dull and lifeless and just following the rules just because that's what we've always done. Authority in a spiritual sense grants you the ability to live out the life that you've been given. But it's risky and it's scary at times, fully. And it's scary. It's out of the box. Believe me, I get that. It's not like I've arrived in this. But I do think it's something we should be stepping more aggressively towards as a people group. Does it seem odd? Seem too out of your comfort zone? Guess what? It is. And that's good. Here, go grab the book I referenced, find a quiet spot, sit and read. Oh, grab a pen and a notebook because you're going to need it. A link to that book is in the bio. Get challenged. Each person who challenges their own spiritual life and deepens their level of spiritual authority makes a difference in God's world, in God's efforts, his plans. That person has more depth with God, the God that we can't grasp. And that is a thing of beauty. A God-given, soul-healed life brings a very different kind of life. One that has the ability to ask and see the actual miraculous. Let's go deeper. Not just emotionalism. Deeper connection to the Almighty who brought us out of darkness with all its pain, boredom, pride, and dullness into his light. Because that's where he wants us to be. He wants us to be in his light. That's all I've got this time, my friends. We'll talk more next time. What's a subject you want to hear about? Let me know in the comments or send me an email. Thanks for tuning in to Christianese. I'll talk to you next time. I love you.
To support Christianese with JD Shin, click in the show notes. It'll help my dad create future shows.